Alright, what up everybody, Colt Nerdy Core, back up with another video. This one is going to be the top 10 games I played this year, and always, unlike other top 10 end of the game year lists that some other people do, mine mainly focuses on the top 10 games I've played this year instead of games that have come out this year, just because as kind of a budget collector, I don't really pick up too many games that come out this year, just because I need to save a little bit of money and the games are ridiculously expensive at the moment. So I try to find games on deals or play older games, so a lot of the list will be filled up with that. And as always, let me know what you guys are playing and what you guys played through this year. I just appreciate you guys watching and hopefully you guys enjoy the video. Alright, so coming in at number 10, we have Deadpool. Deadpool is a game I heard really mixed things about when I first got into it. So I picked it up, I think sometime last year or this year, I can't remember. And I was willing to give it a shot. I kind of went through a little bit of a hack and slash kick. You'll kind of notice with some of the games coming up. So this is one that helped fill that itch. How I would describe this in the simplest way possible is you're basically playing a above average to average hack and slash, decent combos, the generic dodge. You have a kind of a blink that kind of gives you iframes as your little dodge mechanic. You have your standard square square, triangle triangle combos. You have some gunplay, which is actually pretty good, so that's mixed in, and it's kind of a mix between mainly a hack and slash game that you can play as a shooter as well. And the combat, nothing to write home about. What this game did actually really well is capture the character of Deadpool himself. I think they actually did a really good job as portraying the character through the story. It's not some like super deep, thought-provoking story. It's basically just a generic kind of save the world story that sprinkles in a bunch of characters from the X-Men series and other ones in the Marvel franchise that actually interact really well with Deadpool. The game is just littered with a bunch of just crude, stupid comedy that's very just like actual like fart jokes, penis jokes, sex jokes, like all that stuff. It's just surface level jokes, but it's across the entire game. Some of them are done pretty well. Like there's one point where the Wolverine gets knocked out and you have to spam square for like, it's literally like a minute and a half straight of just smacking him in the face to wake him up. So there's some good stuff, and the beginning was actually pretty funny as well. So it does nail the humor pretty well. It's very crude and just straight to the point. So if you're into that, you will enjoy the game. Overall, this was just a pretty fun playthrough. It was in the middle of my hack and slash kick, as I said. The combat's serviceable. The story is decent. There's some interesting parts with some of the characters from the X-Men coming in, and the bad guy is semi-interesting. The main thing you're playing this game for is one, for solid combat if you're into hack and slash games, and two, Deadpool himself kind of sugarcoating the entire game with a bunch of over-the-top and stupid comedy throughout the entire thing. Stupid in a good way, like not intelligent comedy, but it's done well. And enjoying the Deadpool character as you play it through it. It also has a decent leveling up system and upgrades throughout the game, so that part keeps it interesting. And the boss fights, well, pretty simple in their mechanics, are actually pretty interesting and different throughout the game, so that part is good as well. It's a nice short playthrough. I enjoyed it. Good enough to make number 10 on my list. Then this was actually the first game I played through this year. I played it kind of December, very late December, going from last year into this year, January. So I technically finished it this year, so I put it on this list. And this is Need for Speed Unbound. I was very hesitant going into this, picking it up. A lot of the more modern Need for Speed games I haven't really enjoyed too much. I think the last one I liked was, I think it was Rivals. It was the one where you could play as either the cop campaign or the racer campaign, and you would level them up separately. I think it's Rivals. It was on the PS4 very early. But that was the last one I really enjoyed and really put a lot of time into. So I was a little nervous putting the money down for this game, especially because I bought it when it was pretty new. I ended up getting it on sale. It was $50, so still a lot, but for a PS5 game, not too bad. And overall, I actually had a lot of fun with it. The art style they chose to go with in this game is really cool. It really suits the kind of more street racing, artsy, kind of arcadey style this game went with, compared to other Need for Speed games where they kind of like to blend the simulation and arcade style in terms of like realistic looks with kind of arcadey gameplay. This one kind of took the more arcadey on both sides aspect and had some like, I guess it would be like anime or like cartoon effects and characters with it that really were popping, and I actually really enjoyed it. The art style in this game was fantastic. The music in this game was actually pretty good. A$AP Rocky is mentioned a lot, and he's in the story. So if you're into that type of music, like more chill hip hop or rap, mixed with a little bit of metal and pop, you'll enjoy the music in this game. The racing in this game is actually really solid, and I really enjoyed it. Played through the entire game. It's actually a really long campaign. Kind of actually has a serviceable story. It's very predictable in how it goes and like kind of the twists that it goes through, but you'll really enjoy in this game the your kind of mentor in this game. He's a really likable character, and there's like a betrayal in the beginning of the game. I don't want to spoil story elements, but it was very foreseeable, but it adds fuel to the fire for the campaign. And your nemesis that you're kind of going at the entire game is compelling enough to kind of push the story along well, and you want to see kind of the end of it, just to kind of get that final last laugh. The racing for this is actually really solid, as I stated a little bit before. Very classic Need for Speed. I really enjoyed it, and they added a really cool mode. It was I think it's called Takeover, if I'm not mistaken, but they would set up these obstacle courses, and you would go through and like try to smash and try to drift as much, try to hit as many obstacles as possible, and try to keep like a combo train throughout it, to rack up a big score. And you would have certain laps, and you would win, and you could win like cars and stuff from it. That was an interesting mode that they added. It's kind of like if you ever played the Forza games, and they have some of those missions where they tell you to go get a certain score multiplier. It was very similar to that, but the courses they set up are very unique, and I actually enjoyed that mode a lot. So overall, just a really solid Need for Speed game that I actually ended up enjoying a lot more than I thought going in, which was a pleasant surprise, given the fact that I haven't found a racing game, really like a modern racing game, that I really got into, besides Forza a bit. But I was really glad to get into this one, and if you can find it for cheap, I'd recommend it. Alright, so coming in at number 8, I think this is the first multiplayer game I've talked about in any of my end of the year kind of synopsis of my top 10 games I've played this year. But this one was a very unique one, and one I was looking forward to for a while, that actually ended up living up to expectations, so I wanted to include it on the list. So this is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre game. For those of you who don't know about this game, if you've heard of Dead by Daylight, it's rather similar to the game, or the Friday the 13th game. It's made by the same people that made that game. So basically how this game works is it's a two-team kind of battle. One team is the victims. They played by some of the famous characters throughout the series. And one team is the family, which has like Leatherface, Grandpa, the hitchhiker, the guy with the little pocket knife that's in the car at one of the beginning of the movies, and the girl that does the poison. I forget her name, but Susie, that's her name, if I'm not mistaken. I think I'm right on that. But anyways, so the game is set up in two teams. The victims, basically, their goal is to try to activate one of the exit options through either disabling certain things, activating certain valves that open certain doors, lock-picking through doors to get out a certain exit, while using weapons, doors, and looping past, kind of like Dead by Daylight, in order to evade the killers and get out. On the other side, you have the family. Leatherface, it has a big-ass chainsaw, and his goal is basically just to do as much damage as possible, cut off and get rid of certain things that they can use to hide in, and cut off lanes, while the other family members are used to like trap and slow down the progress of them getting out, and your goal is basically just to kill all of them before they get out. It's very simple in kind of design, but the elements of it actually makes it a lot deeper. You have perk trees that you can go through and get different perks and level up to gain insane stat boosts or different elements in terms of your gameplay. So one I use always as a survivor makes it so whenever I heal, I'll heal for a certain amount of time after. So basically any health pot I get is automatically basically a full heal. So you can bait some more aggro or play more aggressive with that perk. So there's a lot of different things you can do with your builds that makes this game have a lot more depth than it may seem. Me and my brother really enjoyed playing this game. We mainly played family, but would occasionally mix in victim. But just the teamwork and kind of the puzzle, it kind of has puzzle elements, except when you get like the really sweaty meta players. But I've always remained kind of low level in this. I'm still only in like the 20s or 30s, so I get matched with other people at my skill level. So it's very much has puzzle mechanics where you're trying to figure out what would be the most optimal path for this team to take, what would be the most optimal path for this team to take, and kind of try to cut them off and kind of slow down or edge out the exit stuff slowly as the survivors. So it's kind of a cat and mouse game that always has you thinking, which is really enjoyable. A couple warnings if you're looking to pick this up. One, the matches take forever to get into. The lobby system, unless they have fixed it recently, I haven't played in probably the last 2 months, just because I've been playing other stuff. But the lobby system was really slow, so it's slow to get into a match. And also, there's a lot of glitches. It's not like game-breaking glitches, but there's a lot of like glitchy stuff throughout the thing. So that's just a fair warning beforehand. But if you can look past this, as I did for most matches, it's actually really enjoyable. Alright, the next up we have Middle-earth: Shadow of War. I played through the original one of this. Oh gosh, I think it was when it came out. So it was either the second or first year the PS4 came out, and I really enjoyed the game. There were some issues I had with the game. I didn't really like the end in the game was horrible, the first one, and the kind of combat and orc system seemed like it could be more fleshed out in that game. So I was looking forward to see what they did with the sequel, and I waited a while on this game. I picked it up like super cheap. I picked up for like $10 because it's been out for so long, and I'm actually really glad I got into it eventually. As I said, I was on a little bit of a hack and slash game or a beat 'em up game kick, so this one was another one that fell into that little niche section I was in for a bit there. So what I really enjoyed about this game is all the different elements that kind of combine together in this game, and how much they amplified the really good things that they did in the first game going into this game. Probably my favorite thing, and probably the thing that sets this aside from a lot of other games I've played in kind of the hack and slash genre, is the Nemesis system, which is kind of the big selling point of this game. So basically, as you're going through all these different places in Mordor, each section or each region has its own kind of orc forces that are scattered throughout. So whenever you open up a new area, there's kind of a ledger of all the different orcs that you know of in the area. And basically what you can do is you can mind control them and get them into your army after kind of defeating them. And then basically you can build up your army of orcs in that area, which they all have their unique traits, unique names, unique attributes, unique weaknesses, unique strengths, and even a unique kind of talking points and stuff like that. So you'll run into ones that are like obsessed with you, so they're always saying like, "Oh my love, my sweet, oh I'm so glad you're here," type thing. Or you'll run up to one of my favorites was this guy who he had a fire staff or a stick or a spear, and he was obsessed with fire, so he'd constantly going around poking like campfire sites and being like, "Oh, this burns, oh I love the burning," and stuff like that. He was insane, but he was really good and saved my life a couple times, so he was one of my favorites. So they all have these like little personalities, which was really cool. You would then level up your orcs, add different perks to them, and kind of work your way to the point where you can take down their region's castle or region's overlord castle. And then basically you would do a siege. The siege were probably my favorite parts of the game, because you go through building up all these armies and getting these specific orcs that you really like, and then you finally get to put it all to use. So basically then siege, you would put all your units, you can kind of select them, which ones you want being kind of your war commanders or your commanders for the fights, and then you could set them up with upgrades, like adding you can add like explosive zappers that will like blow down the walls. You can add big orcs, you can add siege machines, you can add a bunch of different stuff to boost your chances, and then basically it'd go through, capture all the main points, end up in the castle, and then go up with your bodyguard or just by yourself, and end up basically having like usually it's like a 1-on-10 duel with the overlord of the area. You fight them, take over their thing, and then rinse, repeat throughout the game. And there was different story campaigns kind of going on during the process of doing that. So there was like 4 to 5 branching campaigns. So it was actually a good amount of content in this game, and it was rather interesting if you're into Lord of the Rings. It's kind of very over the top, non-canon stuff, but for the kind of story that they were going with in the game, it fits it really well. It was just a lot of fun progressing through, and the upgrade tree in this game is very vast. There's a lot of different cool powers to go through, and the ability to kind of be supernatural, so I have like these over the top supernatural abilities while also doing just the basic like sword combat and the archery combat and the stealth mechanics. Really adds so many different ways you can approach each situation, which is awesome in this game. I recommend picking it up if you haven't yet. I'd start off with the first one just because some of the story elements go over to the next one, and it's cool seeing the advancements they made from the Nemesis system from the first game to this game. So overall, really enjoyed this one. Alright, so coming at number 6, we have Street Fighter 6. I guess it fits. But I was actually really surprised about this game. This was one I was looking forward to coming out this year, so I bought this one on release. So I took the bullet of the basically $100 to play this game off rip. But I actually ended up really enjoying it. My goal of this game was getting into the multiplayer. I was really craving a fighting game when this game came out, and I was hoping to get back into playing a fighting game kind of as my main game. The only other 2 games I did this for was BlazBlue and Injustice, the second one when it came out. So I was hoping to get another game that I could pick up in multiplayer and just kind of grind it out and see how good I could get or whatever. But actually what I ended up playing the most and what I got the most enjoyment out of was the single player mode. So in this game, unlike other fighting games, but very similar kind of to Mortal Kombat Deception, I think it is, the older Mortal Kombats where you kind of had that story mode where you could walk around and you would have like quests and stuff you would do. It's very similar to that mode. First off, I'll start with the fighting game mechanics just before I get into the story campaign. It's very solid. The combat looks really good. All the animations are super clean. The graphic style they went in this game, especially with the upgrades. This is one of the first games I really felt the upgrade to the PS5 and the newer engines. That visually I was just like, wow, this looks fantastic. So visually and art style wise looks amazing. Each fighter plays very differently. They all have their unique movesets, and the colors and kind of splash effects and hit effects all look really great. A lot of different fighting styles. You have your classic heavies, your zoners, you have your grapplers. So it's the classic fighting game mix in this, and they're all done really well. I ended up falling into the Manon camp. I enjoyed playing a grappler. I don't usually play grapplers, so I tried it for this game and really actually enjoyed the gameplay. So back to the single player campaign I just kind of touched on there. So basically how the game worked for this campaign is you would make your own custom fighter, load into this campaign, and your goal was to kind of become as strong as you can while also, you know, kind of halfway through end up stumbling onto kind of this like evil plan, and your goal is to shut them down and also win the big fighting tournament at the end. So what they did, what was really cool in this game, is basically everybody in the big city that you're in or area that you're in, 90% of them you could just go up and fight. So they all had their own levels, their own styles that they used, and their own kind of custom moves that they would be put in, and you could go up and fight them, get rewards from them, level up. So you're constantly like grinding out your character fighting. They had a bunch of little side missions and main quests that you could go through to gain XP, gain certain items. Each of your items that you had on your character would increase different stats. There was a lot of character growth in terms of items, abilities that you could choose on this like tree of, say you wanted extra kick damage, but since you click the extra kick damage, you can't get the extra punch attack. So you kind of had to level up and kind of choose your character, how you want to specialize as you go through, and that made it really unique and made it feel like there was a lot of replayability you could do with the campaign, and also made your character feel unique compared to anybody that was playing the campaign as well. The really cool thing was you could get trained by all the main fighters in the game whenever you ran into them, and you could learn their abilities by leveling up kind of your bond with them. And by the end of the game, you can have this mishmash of all your favorite characters with a bunch of their moves kind of mishmashed into your one created fighter that you could create your own completely unique playstyle from. So basically what I did was create like the most extreme grappler possible. So basically I took Manon's basic set with some of her grabs, mixed them with Zangief's grabs. Basically I became this like super grappler who would just do insane grapple damage, and basically the second I got an AI in a hold or a grab, I could basically I guess would be janking out the AI and basically pressure with lows, insta-grab, press really low, insta-grab, press really low, insta-grab, and I could basically just cheese my way throughout the whole game. So it was fun creating a character like that and being able to experiment with different stuff, so I got that character style I liked. If you're into fighting games at all, or honestly if you're casual into fighting games, but you've ever wanted a fighting game to like get into just to play single player, this is actually the one I would recommend. That or again the older Mortal Kombat's. But this one's probably more new player friendly, and it was actually just really fun to play the campaign and the single player. So once this drops in price, I would actually recommend anybody pick this up. Alright, so coming at number 5, we have Hitman Absolution. I've recently become a big fan of the Hitman games. First one I actually played was Hitman 3, the newest one. So I actually wanted to go back and play some of the older ones. So I picked up, I think the last one on the PS3 ones, which was Absolution. Stealth combat in these games are always fantastic. Really, I've always really loved the difference in kind of tone these games go for in terms of their stealth combat, where most other stealth games like the Splinter Cells, Metal Gears and stuff like that, you're either trying to just fully avoid contact with people, or you're trying to just take people out and drag them out of the situation. So you're trying to always be on the outskirts of the main group of people, and this game basically flips that, and your goal is to be inside, kind of merging along and disguising with all the crowds, and you use that as your camouflage to seek out your targets. I've always enjoyed that aspect of these games, and it actually still hits really well in this game. The story in this game is actually pretty good. There's actually a fair few decent, and some of them funny, some of them really dark and edgy, but there's some really good characters throughout this game, and Agent 47 himself is really likable in this one. The level designs are really good. There's a really good mix of really short ones that kind of have little puzzles or little mini games or different ways you go out and beat the levels, and then it has these more long, flushed out levels that are kind of more the traditional Hitman levels. So there was a good balance, and there was always a bunch of different ways you could complete each level, which was always entertaining and one of the best parts of playing these games. Not too much to say on this one, just a really solid Hitman game, and I'm probably going to end up playing some of the older ones soon, I would assume, because I've really been enjoying busting out these games, and I'm hoping they come out with a new one on the PS5 eventually, because what they can do with the engines now and the continued growth with technology, these games could be absolutely insane in like 5-10 years. Like, they could be nuts. Alright, to continue my hack and slash kind of beat 'em up kind of niche I went through, or kick I went through, we have Assassin's Creed Odyssey. I'm sure by now everybody knows about Assassin's Creed, but it's a stealth game that has hack and slash combats and a little bit of range kind of third person shooting combat with the bow or knives or gun combat, that depending on the era of the game you're getting. And this game falls into the newer category of Assassin's Creed game, where it's more like a open world RPG that mainly focuses on melee combat or stealth combat. So you can basically make your own character and decide really if you want to go just all out brawler, take a weapon and just fight your way through everything, or you can go the classic Assassin's Creed stealth combat, and there's a good mix of it, and you can kind of create your build and get your perks to very much set yourself up to be really good at one or the other, or kind of a jack of all trades. Since I was going through a hack and slash kick, I went just full out everything into melee, and I really enjoyed it. So basically anytime, unless there was like a mandatory self section, I would jump over whatever, go right into the middle of everybody and just start fighting and kicking the shit out of people. That's basically how I approach this game, and it was a lot of fun. I gotta say, I really enjoy the combat of these newer games, with the mix of the abilities, the different weapon styles, and a really fun and fluent combat that's really satisfying once you get the hang of it. As the same for Valhalla, the campaign in this game is freaking massive. Like, the area you go through is insanely big, filled with a bunch of different quests, side characters that you'll run into, main characters that all kind of intertwine into a bunch of different quests, and you'll always run into kind of the same kind of cast of characters throughout the game. There's some really likable characters. Socrates is pretty cool. A bunch of them throughout the game that kind of keep the story pretty interesting throughout the entire experience. Cassandra herself as well was actually really well voice acted, and the character herself is actually pretty interesting, and ended up really liking her as a character, so it was a good choice. Voice actor did a wonderful job throughout the game, and overall she's actually probably one of my favorite characters throughout the Assassin's Creed series after playing through her whole experience. If you're not into the more expansive and kind of littered with a bunch of stuff and more open-ended Assassin's Creed games, this one's probably not for you, but I've come to actually really enjoy them. I like the boss fights, the combat mechanics, and more so just treating the game as a hack and slash game. I've really enjoyed doing that. So I'll probably pick up Origins at some point, but this one, really enjoyed it. Glad I got into it, and really, if you're looking for a long game that's bang for your buck, this is a great one for that. Alright, so we go from one of the longest games I played this year to one of the shortest games I played this year, and that is Resident Evil Village. Obviously not short in a bad way. It's one of those games that just has that perfect length of a playthrough. It's like going to like a 5-star restaurant. You get a small plate, but the bite's really good. That's how I would describe this game. I'm pretty sure everybody by now knows what Resident Evil games are. I've really enjoyed the adaptation they've gone with the first-person games. I really like the POV of first person personally, and Ethan as a character in these games are fantastic, and I've really enjoyed playing through kind of his story throughout the first game into this game. As with 7, the atmosphere and the overall kind of dark and dreary town and castles and cities area that they created in this is fantastic. Art style and graphics are amazing in this game. The different characters and enemies you run into are fantastic. Ethan himself is always entertaining, and one of those protagonists you're playing that you're always rooting for. The gunplay in this is pretty good. As always with Resident Evil game, it's not the most fluent and great feeling first-person shooting or shooting combat, but it's kind of designed that way, and where it's hard to be constantly consistently accurate, but that adds kind of to the tension. It kind of forces you to time and use your ammo sparingly in order to kind of make it through each boss fight with still enough stuff to keep on going throughout the level. The horror elements are more so atmospheric. They're really well done. Some of the characters are really entertaining, and their aura and kind of story that you can kind of find through pieces and pieces through logbooks, or kind of them interacting with different characters throughout the story, are very entertaining and really cool. There's 3 or 4 main areas, and they're all very unique. The castle in the first one with Lady Demo, so the big vampire looking lady with the claws, that area was probably the most interesting for me. Just like 7, I think the first area of the game was super interesting and really elevated the game like this from the start, so I really wanted to see how the rest of the game went. And they had the area with the doll where it was more of a puzzle mechanic and you kind of got transported to a different area. Figuring out all that was really unique and interesting as well. So overall, it was just a really well-rounded experience, and I really enjoyed finally actually getting my hands on this. It held price for so long, so I was finally really excited to pick it up, and it lived up to my expectations. Alright, next up, coming at number 2, this is probably what I would say is the best game this year that I've played in terms of as a game. But the first one has a little nostalgia, a little waiting for it for a while that gives it the nod over this, in my opinion, for my favorite game this year. And that is Like a Dragon, the man who gave up his name or lost his name or something like that. It's a Japanese copy because there are no physical North American releases of this game, so I had to get a Japanese one imported in. But I was really excited to play this because I really enjoy the Yakuza games. Besides the turn-based combat one, I just don't like turn-based combat. So, and I don't really like Ichiban, but that's a whole other video or whole other topic. But Kiryu is fantastic, one of the best protagonists to play through, and he's just a badass. So I was really excited to finally pick up another game with him in it. It's actually on a new engine. Still has the very same style and kind of overview and fighting system and leveling up system and item system as other Yakuza games, but the upgrading graphics and style and performance is fantastic in this game. It's actually a very short game. It's a smaller Yakuza game, but the bite-sized sample of Yakuza game is still fantastic. The combat is as good as ever. This is probably my favorite series personally for beat 'em up or hack and slash combat. It's just always so much fun with all the different heat moves, the combat, and the different fighting styles. Also has a pretty compelling and interesting story with some new characters that are introduced, kind of mixed in and muddled in with older characters. So it creates this new story that's actually really interesting and looks to be one of the ending or last standalone game with Kiryu. So it's really cool seeing the ending of his story, or going to be ending of his story soon. And in my opinion, throughout the game, they've played homage to the character really well. And he's still the same badass superhuman, basically, that he's through the other games. There's also references and characters from the Judgment series in this game as well, which is really cool. And they added this Coliseum mode, which is basically you travel to this separate area that's on this boat, and you can basically recruit a bunch of fighters, which are all, or the majority of them, references to either characters in the current game or characters that were like side characters in other games. There's a couple from previous arenas, Masochist Man or whatever from one of the sub-stories in the other game. As I said, Kaito and Higashi, if I'm getting those names right, you can get on your team as well. So there's a bunch of different references and characters throughout the series that you can build and upgrade onto your team, and basically go through this ladder of fighting a bunch of different other teams. There's also solo tournaments, there's special event tournaments, and there's a bunch of different options to go through this arena system, which is completely separate from the main story, but kind of has its own little sub-story mixed in. There's a bunch of different mini games. You have your darts, your golfing, which I really enjoy, is probably one of my favorites, your billiards, and all the like card games or the mahjong and stuff like that that are in like every Yakuza game. Those are all fantastic. Pocket Circuit Racing's back, which is one of my favorites, and has all the little rival systems and its own unique story as well. As always, the side missions are where it's at in this game. All the unique, crazy over the top, crazy serious, really sad and depressing to really funny and just out of nowhere. It has that really wide range and really wide scope that makes this game so interesting, and you never really know what you're getting into with each side mission, which is always fun about these games. And the main story is solid as well, enjoyable with some new characters that fit the series really well. So overall, a fantastic game. Really recommend this if you can pick it up. It's also not full price for a PS5 game. Even from Japan, it was I think $55 or something like that. So definitely worth the money. It's a shorter game in terms of the other Yakuza games, but you still get a lot of time out of it. Probably somewhere in the 25 to 30 if you go through and do everything. So definitely worth it. Really enjoyed this game. Amazing experience. Alright, so the final game, and my favorite game that I played through in 2023, is Hogwarts Legacy. The reason why I say this game gets the nod over Like a Dragon Yakuza game is the fact that this is the Harry Potter game a lot of us as Harry Potter fans have been waiting for, ones that are also gamers. And the fact that they actually nailed the experience and atmosphere of the game while also being able to create your own character, go through Hogwarts, go through classes, and do all that stuff that as a kid, us as fans were always picturing ourselves doing, going through our minds like, oh, this would be cool to do these classes. Oh, it'd be really cool to get sorted into a house, go for points, go for the cup, do all this stuff and experience Hogwarts. It was always like every Harry Potter kid's growing up's fantasy, and to be able to actually play it in a game that nailed it was incredible to me, and honestly a really cool experience. My favorite part of this game personally, besides the combat, besides the story, besides any of that, is the atmosphere and the look of everything and the design and the experience of just going around exploring Hogwarts. And my favorite thing was when you got your broom finally, being able to fly around the castle and go through like Hogsmeade and stuff like that, and being able to experience the area. I really got that excited Harry Potter fan kid from back in the day in me ready and going, and I was stoked to finally play a game that kind of nailed the atmosphere of the Harry Potter games correctly. Villains and trials and tribulations of certain characters, then to go to classes and learn different spells, perfect different spells, and learn to advance your skills farther. Having those two different elements made it feel exactly like the movies or books, where they would go on these crazy adventures, then still go to classes. The story itself was pretty interesting. It wasn't like insanely good or It had these like insane twists that you wouldn't expect happening. It was very cookie cutter in terms of you know what was going to happen, but it was delivered very well. The bad guy actually had a compelling reason to be the bad guy, and it served as a quality way to keep the story going. The side quests in this game were actually also really well done as well. It had a bunch of different really unique ones. One of my favorite one was when you meet the elf in the village. I think it's during winter, and you buy the shop from her. You go into the chest in the shop, and it turns out to be a trap. That one, not going to spoil too much more after that, but that one was one of my favorite and one of the more unique ones I experienced for this game. They also had the little mini game with the balls that was pretty fun, where you had to pull them. It was kind of like shuffleboard. That was pretty cool as well. Really wish Quidditch was a part of this, because they had the broom flying down really well. It was really well done. The races were fun. Quidditch in this game would took it from A tier to like super S tier for me. But hopefully in the second game, or if they make a standalone Quidditch game, which would be fantastic, we'd get to experience that as well. The combat in this game is pretty good. It's kind of your basic spam your spells. You have your counters, kind of rock, paper, scissors mechanics in terms of certain colors break certain colors. So if you have a yellow shield, you use a yellow spell against them. Red, you use a red. I think the other one's purple, you use a purple. And then you can kind of combine them, so you could do like a knockdown to a pole, to lighting them on fire, and then pushing them away. There's definitely a sense of making your own cool combos and kind of finding your own playstyle. And the other thing that was really well done, and probably the last thing I'll touch about this game, is the main 4 characters that you interact with, the other students. Their stories are actually really well done. My favorite was probably Poppy's. Early was Sebastian. I hated Sebastian by the end of the game, so I was just trying to piss him off as much as possible. But Poppy's story I actually really enjoyed, and I thought hers was the most interesting. But they were all really well done, and they added a lot to the experience of the game. Overall, as a game itself, still a really solid and really good game. Definitely recommend playing it, even if you're not a Harry Potter fan. And the variety of different stuff you can do in this game, and the depth of the RPG stuff, would make anybody really interested in the game itself. But for me personally, why this gets the nod as my favorite game this year is just finally being able to experience the Harry Potter kind of world through a game, and especially one where I was able to make my own character and kind of do my own experience through Hogwarts. Was an incredible feeling, being a fan of this series for so long, finally getting a game that delivered on it and delivered on it well. I'm really hoping they create a second one, or a standalone Quidditch game would be fantastic. Quidditch is one of the things I've always wanted an insanely quality game of, and there's so much you could do with that. Imagine an ultimate team, but like non-pay to win, but like an ultimate team of all like the famous Quidditch players. The game's also really solid, so that's why it makes number 1 on my list for me. Alright, so there it is. That is the top 10 games I've played through in 2023. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know, as I said in the beginning, let me know some of the games that you guys played through this year, and especially newer ones, or ones on the PS3, because I've been looking for new ones to pick up. And overall, hope you guys all had a great year. If you haven't, hopefully 2024 will be a lot better too. Thank you for watching, and remember, everybody has their nerdiness at their core.